Stranger Things Season 3 just started back on Netflix on July 4th, 2019. You may be listening to this later. But the interesting thing, though, Stranger Things, I just love it because it's like going back to like a Goonies era, like the 80s, this cool show. And it's interesting to see how time just has a way of repeating itself. People just like to go back to past eras. Listen to me on this. In sales, we find that sometimes people will say cold calling is dead or it's not dead and so forth, and social media is a new thing and blah, blah, blah. Everyone has a different idea. My guest today is going to resurrect or bring new life to how we can utilize cold calling even with social media. You're going to like this stuff. This episode today is brought to you in part by TSC Certified Sales Training Program. If you are a sales rep or you have a sales team and you're trying to figure out ways that you can help your team improve their skills, check out TSC Certified Sales Training Program. The first 2 modules are absolutely free, and it would be an honor to have you join. This episode is also brought to you in part by Audible. Take advantage of a 30-day free trial and also a free book of your choice. Simply go to audibletrial.com/TSE. Again, audibletrial.com/TSE. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode, I have a good friend named Aaron coming on the show. Aaron simply is a curious IT marketer who just really prefers hanging out with salespeople. He had a breakthrough once where he realized how digital and automation and conversation through video communication can actually augment human interaction with potential customers and users, not to detract from it. And he is the host also of a podcast as well. It's called Outcome Studio Podcast. Currently, Aaron has a solo consulting practice where he helps IT companies and solution providers infuse social selling and video to build targeted awareness and augment the traditional inside sales efforts. So check out what he has to share, some great insights here. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Donald, dude, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
And dude, I'm excited to have you. I know you're going to give us some great insights today. And we're going to talk a lot about the idea of cold calling, but not in a traditional sense. We're going to talk about how even today, in the era of social selling and utilizing social selling, cold calling isn't dead. And I'm super excited to hear your thoughts and insights on that. But before we dive into all that fun stuff, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for teeing that up, Donald. So last June 2018, I quit my full-time job in IT solution provider, also what's known as a value-added reseller in the IT world if you do any enterprise IT software selling. And I really had a passion for helping sales reps and helping small business owners in the IT space figure out how to get their message out there. At that provider, I was inside sales manager as well as communications manager, did a lot of field events. And I noticed that, Donald, the industry was really lagging behind in some of these digital trends, particularly social selling, and not just like, hey, should we do social selling? But we didn't even know how to approach it. And I saw that as a common theme through the industry. So I left my full-time job. It's been about a year now. And now I'm helping executives at some of these companies manage their LinkedIn profiles, as well as produce content that then can sort of trickle down to the team and enable everybody's social selling efforts, as well as, just some inside sales consulting. So yeah, that's what I'm up to nowadays.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Well, first off, congratulations on taking that huge step, doing what you're doing right now and being where you are. I think that's fascinating. And that you were able to take your passion and to create it. Because it's a similar story to us. Mine was back in 2015, where I left my full-time gig and the opportunity grew and it was there and just super fun. And it's been a whirlwind of a journey. So,
yes,
it's awesome, man.
Whirlwind, as well as you make so many more mistakes, I think, when you're on your own, because you don't have the safety net of a team or a company or those close coaches to help you on a day-to-day basis. That was my biggest sort of emotional struggle. So I appreciate what you built with your podcast and the brand. So kudos to you.
Thank you, man. It's been amazing. And I agree with you tremendously there. I've learned that you can't grow within your silos, right? And I think it will grow within a silo. And like you, I collaborate and learn from other people who are out there who are doing, amazing things. And I think that's where, like, folks who are listening to this episode, they're here because obviously they want to continue to grow. And I think that's just one of those factors that make us all better, make us all improve. So
yeah, definitely. Awesome. And maybe one more point to that end. I mean, that's exactly why I started my podcast. I'm nowhere near the plus 1,000 episodes you are, but at a healthy, 22, 23 episodes, and I got a couple in the hopper. It's just so fun talking to people in the space because we get in this bubble, and maybe it's relevant to our conversation we're going to dive into about social selling and cold calling. But we get in our bubble and we think, oh my gosh, the way we've been doing things for the last 3-5 years around cold calling and emailing, for example. We built the sales process. This is how it works. But unless we go out into the space and learn from other folks, we can't know how to evolve. And the evolution is so hard. Again, not just tactics, but emotionally. And how does the business put process and KPIs to measure some of these evolutions? And the podcast is extremely helpful for that. Just talking to people and hearing what's working, test something out. And, that's how we evolve. Just get better.
So darn true, man. We're going to hit that up. Let's start from the top and do some definitions first off. Why don't you tell us what you mean when you say cold calling, first off?
For sure. That's a good fundamental and a good differentiator too. So I actually started my career in an inbound call center, and that was more focused on people calling in for inquiries. That's sort of cold calling, but I would call that more like customer service or even, converting inbound marketing leads. When I think of cold calling, I think a lot of folks that listen to this know what Zoom Info is or what Discover Org might be. Or let's say our marketing team handed us over a list from a trade show, and maybe at the booth, our sales reps talk to 20, 30 of those. So cold calling, Donald, I think of it as typically we have our sales development rep in enterprise IT or just technology selling designated to calling, emailing, nurturing leads. And a lot of times these are just cold outreach, meaning that particular contact has not had much, if any, contact with our business or our value prop. So just net, you're going in cold.
Perfect. Now, understanding this is the case. And when we talk about social selling, why don't you tell us your definition, your thoughts on social selling? I promise you, everyone, listeners, this is all going to tie back.
Yeah, it totally will. And I think, depending on your journey in your career, if you've been around for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, that, email came on the scene in early 1990s and through the 2000s. I mean, email was very important, and cold calling and door to door, going to events and networking events, that was super important. But, nowadays we have social media. We didn't even have that in the same capacity even back in 2010. And so when we think about social selling, particularly when you get to larger deal sizes, Donald, and you want to get to specific contacts in that account, they can be senior, they can be peer-to-peer level if it's sales rep to, more of a junior level in the case of IT, like engineer. Either way, if that contact is active on social media, there is a way that we can engage with that person. So really, I think of social selling as the back end of social engagement, which is, hey, how do we just kind of make friends and introduce ourselves to people in the space, just genuine curiosity. The selling comes way later, which I think is why companies struggle with it. But that's how I think about it.
And I think that's that point there. And I think it's having you clarify that is crucial, because so many people, when we say social selling, they think, bro, I cannot tell you, I have people that I know, whenever they reach out to someone, say they make a connection, the next message is, hey, this is our services and services. So do you want to buy? And I'm like, oh my goodness, that is not how you do it. You're doing it wrong.
Yes. Or even let's use the example of how you reached out to me, Donald. I'm not super active on Instagram, but for Outcome Studio, I have an Instagram sort of company handle. I'm mostly active on LinkedIn, and I'm using that to distribute the podcast and make connections. But you did such a nice job and caught me off guard. You said, hey, Aaron, loving your content, loving what you're doing. It'd be cool if we just had a conversation sometime. Would love to have you on the podcast. You used specifics and you gave me affirmations about what I'm doing, and you made it super relevant and tailored. And I think, was it a video message or audio message over Instagram?
I think it was an audio message I did first.
And dude, you just made it feel so tailored to me, and you didn't sell me, you didn't strong arm me onto your podcast. So I think we can extrapolate that concept across, you name it. But yeah, man, I think those are some fundamentals. We can't just be pitching right out of the gate. These people don't know us. Otherwise, they'd be calling us inbound, or would they be filling out a contact form on our website for a white paper, a demo, right?
Yeah, I mean, and like, yeah, it's just not going to, and it just doesn't work in a sense. Like I think logically, it sounds like it would make sense. Meet somebody, pitch, they buy. However, when everyone, literally almost everyone in sales that's not educated on this are doing the same exact thing, you're not going to stand out. You're just going to seem like the same old. You're going to get put into a spam folder. So we have to come to the table. We have to come with something a little bit more genuine. So yes, understanding that now, but people will tell me, they'll say, well, Donald, we're in an age of social media now. We're in an age of social selling. We're in an age of this. Then why in the world would I even try or attempt to do cold calling? Why do you feel that cold calling isn't dead, even living in this era and this opportunity that we have right now?
Yeah, dude, I'm so glad you came full circle. And I would also maybe add, like, cold calling and email both aren't dead.
Yeah.
And I just had a recent example of this. Like when I was an inside sales manager at my last company and then moved to Demand Gen, I wasn't doing so much cold calling. My, sales development reps on my team were. But as a consultant, like, I'm just doing what I have to get results for my clients. And there was a situation just in May 2019. We were trying to drive attendance to an event. And this was technical engineers and directors for like network security. And I can't tell you how many times they said, oh my gosh, I saw your email, or you liked my post on LinkedIn or Twitter. Thank you so much. And when I made that cold call connect, they remembered who I was. And so I think it's that we can't rely on all cold calling, Donald. We can't rely on all email or all social media. It's that mix that really helps us just get in front of that buyer and have them say, no, I can't come to your event, or, no, I'm not going to take a demo at this time, or, oh my gosh, I've been waiting to actually get a hold of you. Sorry, I've been so busy. Thank you for calling me. And I think as a rep, psychologically, Donald, that feels so good. Like, oh, this person's excited to talk to me. So instead of cold calling, I just think of it as warm calling, and in social media. And, there are some advanced strategies to that, particularly in account-based marketing, that like can really help warm that conversation.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, Aaron and I are going to continue the conversation, pick up where we left off, and share with you some more ideas and actionable things that you could take away right now and implement in your sales efforts. You're listening to the Sales Evangelist podcast, and I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. In my beginning efforts as a sales rep, man, it was tough. I was begging for money. I didn't know what I was doing, and I had a really difficult time. The company I was working with, well, they were smart enough to put me through some sales training, and then I saw a hockey stick in my performance. One of the cool things was each week we went to this group training program, and I was able to fortify my skills and improve. And next thing you know, I started to really do well. I figured whenever I have my own opportunity, I'll educate sales reps like that. So we created TSC Certified Sales Training Program. It's to help sellers of all levels. If you are trying to figure out what are the best strategies to find prospects, the first section will teach you that. If you know what to do to find the prospects, but you're having a difficult time crafting the right questions or getting them to say yes to your demonstration, well, we have a section devoted just to educate you on building value. Or even if you have an amazing way of finding the problem, but you're just not delivering it right, or perhaps you're just not getting them to say yes often enough, we have a section devoted just for closing. If you want to test it out for yourself, you can take advantage of the first 2 modules absolutely free. Go to thesalesevangelist.com/free course. Again, thesalesevangelist.com/free course. It would be an honor to have you and your team join. This episode is also brought to you in part by Audible. One of the cool things is that I dissect and devote my time to educating myself as a sales leader, as a business owner, and also as an individual. My wife and I are expecting our first little guy later this year, and one of our friends recommended BabyWise. So I'm listening to that book. It's an amazing book, by the way. Besides talking about sales, I also love talking about space. So if there's anything I can learn about space, hey, I'll check that out. So there's a book I'm listening to as well called Beyond Earth. And of course, there are the sales education books. I have plenty of those in my arsenal. One of them I recommend you check out is Bob Burg's book, The Go-Giver. Now, you could take advantage of Audible. They are giving the TSC audience a free book of your choice. You can choose one of those or one of your own, absolutely free. And then they'll give you 30-day access to Audible. You can't beat that offer. I would recommend you go check it out. Go back to the show notes or simply go to audibletrial.com/TSE. Again, audibletrial.com/TSE. You're going to go on a whole new adventure now. Good stuff. Hey, so we're back and we're going to pick up where we left off. Aaron and I are going to continue the conversation, share with you some actionable ideas that you can implement today that can help you make sure you're doing effective cold outreach, even in the age of social media. So if I understand this correctly, you're saying then you're warming them up via social media, you're connecting, you're doing that stuff, like almost like the Gary V, like, jab, right hook concept. I'm going to warm you up. I'm going to share content, like your stuff, be engaging, be relevant first off. So when you do get that call, it is not out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm. And I think you got it. I think cost of sale has to support this. So, there are automated ways we can spam people on social media, but if that cost of a lead sometimes in IT is like $200, $300. I mean, I think a trade show lead, the industry average is like $800. I mean, go do your own research on that, folks, but it's astronomical. So considering that, if it just takes a few hours of your time to get in front of somebody and have them, take interest in your product, that's big. But I think the challenge is executives and sales managers don't know how to measure this stuff. And so as a result, people just spam on social media because it's like, I have to set my meetings this month or this week. And I don't have time to nurture this person for 45 days, 90 days. So I think this is like a multi-quarter strategy sometimes, which I know people don't want to hear. But in my view, that's the direction this is going.
So I'm glad you brought that up because you're a manager and you understand this, because sometimes I connect with managers or sales reps and, I bring managers on a podcast and they'll say this nice fluffy stuff. Yeah, we want our sales reps to do social media, blah, blah, blah. But it just doesn't work in the sense when they get back into the office and the VP, however, is saying we need to hit this quarter numbers and your sales reps are ramping up and they're connected with folks on social media, but it's not there. But you're like, dude, we need appointments. So then the sales reps are like, crap, my job's in a line. I need an appointment. Let me go ahead and go schedule try to spam or try to get a bunch of people. So they're coming down. How can we as management execute that and still yet, because you said it's it's going to take some time, right? How do we best go about making sure that happens?
Yeah. And dude, I think that's part of the argument too of why cold calling and email isn't dead, because if we can spend 80% of our time on cold calling and emailing and hit our targets there, or at least come close, right? Like 1 week we set 3 meetings as a sales development rep or your account executive. 1 meeting we set 7 using phone and email. I don't care what it is, but do that in 80% of your time. 20% of your time, do some of this stuff and just, honestly, when I started doing this, man, I had to do it on the weekends. I know people don't want to hear this, but sales managers, especially approach like your reps that are super motivated, spend an hour after work, right? Like go get a beer, go get breakfast one morning and just connect with 20 of your key buyers together and practice making your messaging just like, hey, we want to build a relationship with you. You're doing interesting stuff, buyer, and leave it at that. And what you're going to start to see over, 30, 60, 90 days is you will set meetings office. Promise you, but you have to hit those, phone and email KPIs, I think, because we're in the transition period at a lot of companies, especially in IT, where you're just not going to get the grace period to spend 100% of your week on this stuff. If that answers your question. No, roundabout way of validating phone and email though.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And so just reiterating, we need to make sure that when as you're going through this approach, you might say, let's say for 25% of your time, 25% of your leads or 25% of your time, you're going to focus on try to get some social media. So I'm going to position 2-3 hours a day to try to ramp, nurture, and then kind of build up from there as I start to see it working. So let's say if I tested that for a month, doing 25-30% of my time a day, and I nurture, and I start getting 2 appointments consistently from social media, me interacting with them and then following up on a phone call, and that's working, and I'm getting, say, 3 appointments from just doing straight up cold call, I can transition that approach, or even maybe build into the cadence something like that, where it might be I do a jab, I connect with them on social, I share some content and so forth, and then the second part, I'm going to do the phone calls and the outreach towards them. But is that what I'm understanding? Kind of budgeting your time?
100%. Here's the deal too, Donald. A lot of, for example, progressive software companies, I see a lot in the sales technology and marketing technology space. A lot of companies are doing this forward leaning because their buyer is a sales rep or their buyer is a marketer who happen to be just way more active on social media.
Yeah.
I think what you just described really applies to maybe more of a laggard industry like IT. Like IT, I love you. I love my engineers. Like cybersecurity is so cool. Networking is fascinating. Like migration of applications to the cloud is so important. But a lot of these folks are a little bit behind. And so as a result, sales process is behind. Like it doesn't include this stuff. So you sales reps who are in IT or other laggard industries, I think you have to be kind of tip of the spear on this stuff. And yes, your recap there was perfect, Donald.
So what else can we do? What are the reasons? Do you have any examples or anything from your teams or anyone that you've worked with where it shows that cold calling is not dead, where you guys have implemented this approach and saw it work effectively?
Yeah, I'll use the example just again from May 2019. We used social media.
So this is like straight, the guys who are listening, this is like, we're recording right now. This is June. So this is only like, this is data that you're sharing that's like relevant, brand new stuff.
Yeah, it's super fresh. And so we had 8 days to drive attendance to a technical workshop. And the presenter actually was a technical person, like he was a director of IT. And so what we did was we took over his LinkedIn profile, created some explainer videos of him saying, hey, network security people, here's why you might want to come to this hands-on workshop. Here's what you'll learn. And we deployed that video not only on LinkedIn off his personal handle, but like one-on-one, Donald, 2 specific people who we thinking were contacts that could come. We also used Outreach.io for sequencing. Yep. If you don't know what that is, it's just a sales engagement platform.
We just had the VP on the show.
That's amazing. And if you have any marketers listening, marketers, go check out the difference between marketing automation and sales engagement platforms. Super important stuff. You know the difference. But then, Donald, when we were cold calling, in 8 business days, we got 7 attendees to this event. And 4 of them came off of, we connected with phone after sending LinkedIn and these email messages. And they said, oh my gosh, I've seen your stuff. They either attended the workshop or they said, hey, we can't attend that day, but we're going to go ahead and take a meeting with you. This is really interesting to us in our job. So really fresh, relevant example. And again, we did this in 8 business days and still used social media. So I use that as an example because you can be aggressive with it. It's just, you got to think long-term. Is that as friendly long-term if you're pitching people in their LinkedIn messages? It's not great, but like you can do it and maybe pick a tactical initiative you have this month or this quarter and give it a shot.
How long do you recommend that we engage before we go for an ask or make that phone call?
It's a good question. I don't think there's a rule of thumb other than some type of 2-way engagement is very good. Like you liked their post or left a comment, they commented back. That's a good sign. Or they sent you a connection request after you did a softer follow. I think all those are healthy. I've also seen, you can just send a nice, thoughtful connection request right away. I think you have to play with it based on who your buyer is and who, you're tasked with setting meetings with. But also sales reps, you really need to think about doing something like Donald's doing, just produce a piece of content. So make some videos or, make your own blog or just start writing your own thoughts about the industry. Because these people want to take a meeting with you, like you, the sales rep, because they like you and they like your style versus, oh, I want to take a meeting with your brand. That not always, but think about if you work at Cisco, for example. There's armies and armies of sales reps at Cisco, but you specifically, your own little personal brand. And so if people like you, just like a networking event, engage right away, engage in 30 days. I don't know, but try it out. And I think that's healthy.
So good, man. Love that. Now, and then, so go back. One of the things I think is also really cool to make mention is what you shared about the 2-way dialogue, right? And I think that's where we become impatient at times. And that requires, then it's going to go to my next question. So if we want to make sure we have 2-way dialogues before we hit the phones or make that phone call, or at least we could try to get that 2-way dialogue, it's imperative then, because some sales reps will probably just want to, again, take the cake out of the oven before it's fully baked. And what I mean in that sense is we will say, well, I sent them a couple things on LinkedIn. I like a couple of their stuff. Maybe it's a good time for me to just do the call now. But what can we do to make sure that our content that we are sharing to grab their attention is engaging enough that it solicits 2-way conversation?
That's such a good question. This is, Donald, an example of I'm only going to talk about what I know. But in my experience too, sales reps, if you're talking to a technical buyer, especially if it's someone who's been hands-on in the past. So they've actually done engineering work using IT as an example. You maybe should think about going to some technical meetups in your area and go to a cloud or cybersecurity meetup after work one day for 40 minutes and listen to how these people talk about their industry and problems with their job. Or if you work at an IT company, go hang out with your engineers, right? Like go sit with them on a demo, something like that, but start to learn the nomenclature and the language these people use. Because what happens as salespeople and marketers, we do it too. We just do this marketing speak and we just throw these buzzwords and this jargon at people. I mean, I do it all the time. And we see trends too, Donald, of people recommending make language in your email conversational. And I think specifically what that means is know your niche. And if it's a technical buyer, how do they converse with each other and make them feel like the subject matter expert? Like as a sales rep, if you're fresh out of college, you can't hang with like a cybersecurity engineer who's been doing it for 30 years, probably. No. But what you can do is say like, hey, based on what I'm seeing in the space, you seem to be a subject matter expert. Here's why. I read some of the stuff you did. I read this about your company. Really think it's interesting. I'm just trying to learn the space. Would love to connect. And I think, that's a great way to start and you'll start to get a feel for it.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely love that, man. I think that makes total sense. And the cool part about all of this too, what you're sharing here in relation to the buyer and towards understanding their language, it's crucial. And I think in order for you to be successful, whether it's in sales or anything in life, you need to make sure that you understand who you're talking to and that you've done your homework. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've seen. It doesn't matter when I was doing soccer in high school or if I was doing track and field, the times when I've taken time outside of my practice at school and done stuff at home and did my due diligence and jumped some hurdles in a driveway, or those times, the more that I practice it, I was able to perform better in the actual event. And I think the same concept applied towards selling. We can't just expect to just pick up the phone, go to work 8 to 5, pick up the phone, and then we're going to be successful. We need to make sure we're understanding these buyers. We're reading upon industry stuff. I went to a client. I'll give you a quick example the other day. Yeah. In their office, they had some magazines that were pertaining to their industry. And I'm like, you know what? Why in the world do I not have access to these magazines? So I took pictures of them so we can get them, so we can know what to do. And then we came back and then the team were getting that stuff so we can be educated on particular industry stuff that they're studying or they're reading, so that we can use their jargon. We can understand some of those pains. And like you're saying, going to their meetups and things like that. So that makes total sense.
That is so smart. There are so many creative ways we can learn. Like maybe it's YouTube. You used a magazine. Yeah. I use the meetup example. Maybe you just hop on YouTube and follow this stuff.
Straight up.
And you said something else, Donald, that I want to reiterate too. You're going to sound dumb trying to talk the way buyers talk, but like, it's not a sleazy thing. It's just like, you practicing engaging with somebody new. Like, let's say you went to a new country. You're not just going to blab English at people when the language is German. It's not going to go over well. I mean, like these are fundamentals. It's just human behavior to like try to modulate how we talk to somebody. Yeah. And also, if you go to create content, I bet you remember your first few podcast episodes or producing video on LinkedIn. If your buyer's on LinkedIn, you're going to sound stupid. Like you're going to have posts that don't do well, but you're also going to have posts that do well that your buyers engage with that you never would have expected. And Donald, I run into this with executives too, man. They are scared. They're so scared to create content or talk more broadly to the space. And you use that great example. You just gotta start small and be willing to try it.
Love it, man. So true. If there's one major takeaway you'd like folks who are listening to this who have their trepidation about utilizing social media and cold calling, what's that one major piece of advice you'd give them, Aaron?
If you're a sales rep or even like a sales manager, maybe even director, and you're feeling like, hey, our buyers are active on social media, literally take screenshots, find time to sit with your VP of sales. I don't care if it's a one-on-one, and make sure you're hitting your calls and emails requirement, your meeting requirement, your pipelines where it needs to be. Show this stuff to your leaders in one-on-ones, because if they see a C-level CISO, a target buyer, just active on LinkedIn constantly, it's like, sir, we can use this channel as a way to get in front of our buyers. So I'm just using that as an example. Just I think versus tell, it's a lot of show, and you have to be hitting your baseline goals with calls and emails to be able to, get the audience with your leaders to start adopting some of this if you are at a laggard type of organization. And a lot of us are. So that's kind of my final tip there.
Love it, man. Well, if you have a podcast, do you mind speaking to that for a second?
Yeah, it's the Outcome Studio podcast. So if you find me on LinkedIn, guys, Aaron Abadili, or on Instagram, you can check out the Outcome Studio podcast. But like I said, about 23 episodes in, and I interview folks who are sales and marketing experts or just people who have cool stories to tell. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But if you're into Donald's podcast, I think you might dig what I'm doing.
Well, I highly recommend it, guys. Go over there and check it out. We have a link back in the show notes so you can get access to it, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today, Aaron. We appreciate it.
Cool. Hey, Donald, thanks so much for the invite. This was a ton of fun, man. Nice meeting you, and you're doing great with your effort. So keep it up.
Anytime. I'm telling you, man, go back and connect with my good friend Aaron. We have a link back in the show notes. I'm going on his podcast later this year, and I'm telling you, it's a great podcast, great show, great content. He has a YouTube channel as well where he pumps out tons of great information. Find all the details back in the show notes. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, just simply swipe up on the cover art, and you can find the links and all the information to Aaron and to his show as well. If you haven't done so already, check out our friends over at Audible. They're really, really loving the Sales Evangelist audience, where they're giving us one free book and a 30-day free trial. Go ahead and check it out. If you want to find a book, go check out Bob Burg's The Go-Giver series. Amazing content. Also, check out TSC Certified Sales Training Program. Would love to have you join. We have a new semester, great new content, and it's ideal for anyone that's trying to improve their sales skills. Find all the details again back in the show notes. We share stuff like this. We bring folks like Aaron on the show because we want to help you. We want you to find more ideal customers, want you to have more meaningful conversation, want you to close more deals, but most importantly is to challenge you each and every single day to go out and do big things. Hey, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our episode today. I know you could be doing so many other things, but you took time to come here, and I appreciate that. If you haven't done so already, I ask that you go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. That way you can get notified whenever we have a new episode. You can also share it with your friends and family and anyone you know that could benefit from listening to an awesome sales show. And review on Apple Podcast or Google Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you listen to find shows like this. It goes a long way when someone is searching for a podcast and they see that other people are loving it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. This episode today was produced by myself and the Sales Podcast Network. It was edited and mixed together by the one and only Jershon O'Bale. Our content writer and show note creator is Shannon Rasmussen. You can find audio credits to this and all of our episodes in the show notes. And as always, I am your host, your coach, your mentor, your guide down the sales journey, Mr. Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. Sales Podcast Network.